Rowan Williams has graciously consented to take some questions. We have maybe about 20 minutes before the reception, which will be in the foyer. So I think it's better, actually, if he, who's very used to doing so, fields them himself. So please keep your questions short, straightforward, insofar as that's possible, and make them questions and not speeches. I'm sure you've all heard that said before, and you know what I mean. So, who would like to begin?
Somebody there. If you'd like to stand up, that'd be helpful. Yes, please.
What dangers do you think our language of social media and all these ideas such as the Twitter sphere and all this new vocabulary in the last 10 years, what danger do you think it poses towards our idea of the human?
Very important question indeed, thank you. I think you can probably deduce some of the answers from some of the priorities I've sketched. I think we are a bit at risk in some of the more ambitiously fantasizing language around social media, a bit in danger of delocalizing, dematerializing our sense of who we are and where we are. The extraordinary development of virtual identities, which people are encouraged to adopt in some kinds of electronic gaming, and more than gaming, that does suggest to me that our hold on the local and the material can be weakened by this. I'm not one of those who gets apocalyptic about social media, but that's a worry. And it seems to me one of the great paradoxes that this age, which we sometimes describe as being very materialistic, should have so many non-material, virtual passions and obsessions around it, as if we were really rather afraid of being the messy, vulnerable blobs of matter that we actually are. John Gray, in the book I mentioned a moment ago, has a very interesting, rather moving coda to his discussion, in which he says that we are constantly, as human beings, it seems, in search of a friction-free or conflict-free environment. And we delude ourselves that virtual identities and the like are exactly that conflict-free, friction-free environment. We do not want to come to terms with the fact that we are going to die, that we get ill, that we bump into things, that we love, hate, suffer, and so forth. So I think there are risks to be identified there.
At what point do you think consciousness arose during evolution? It seems to me that bacteria are conscious in many ways. They form complex communities. They interact with each other. They communicate with each other. I mean, how does all that go? Where did it come from?
Yes. One of the most interesting and controversial discussions of consciousness in the last 15 years or so has been reflected in the work of the Australian-American philosopher David Chalmers, who at one point advanced a view which he and others have described as panpsychism, that there is in some sense something analogous to consciousness at every level of active reality. Like some of his critics, I find myself a bit divided on this. I don't want to make the word consciousness so general that it loses its human and animal specificity. At the same time, I think what he and others have drawn attention to is exactly what you say, that the way in which the world is patterned on the receiving and processing of information, the way in which low-level organisms, cellular organisms, respond, interact, and so forth, does mean that it's not as if consciousness is something dropped as an alien reality onto the world of dead matter that people sometimes talk about. It's that whatever we mean by life and agency is always moving towards something like consciousness, and it's very hard to cut that at any particular point. And I think that's a helpful thing to bear in mind, because sometimes there is a kind of philosophical, indeed theological language, which sort of suggests that consciousness really is the magical extra that will injection at some point, rather than the notion that there is something about the entire universal system of information exchange, energy exchange, which moves in this direction, towards an organism which can register itself, not just its environment, and in registering itself also registers other points of view. It's a continuum, I think.
Do you think that little extra was due to divine intervention?
Personally, I don't think one needs divine intervention. I think one needs divine oversight. That God makes a world in which intelligence will naturally come to birth. Because God makes a world, I'm being very theological here, God makes a world whose life is destined to reflect God's own life. And therefore what God makes carries the image of intelligence in it. Sooner or later, this complex material universe will generate not only intelligence, of course, but love, and that's another story. I don't know if you remember the old chestnut about somebody who was lecturing on ancient Indian cosmology. It's what Terry Pratchett uses in Discworld, the disc on the backs of 4 elephants standing on a big turtle. And somebody listening to a lecture and said, "But what does the turtle stand on?" And there was a pause, and the lecturer said, "It's turtles all the way down." And somebody adapted that and said, "It's intelligence all the way down."
Thank you. As your lecture was unfolding, I couldn't help but thinking of the self-driving cars, which have a sense of location and a sense of others around them. And I'm wondering to what extent they're becoming conscious. Even in the early 1970s, the language issue that Turing had hypothesized, where you could talk to a computer and not perhaps be able to tell whether it was a computer or a human being you were talking to, was a test of consciousness. I'm wondering to what extent such things as love, joy, fear, the ability to appreciate music, these things that we consider human are necessary to consciousness.
Yes, thank you for that, because it's a very tough question. And in what sense there could be conscious machines is one of those issues which people like Raymond Tallis have written on a good deal. And you may have come across that extraordinary collection of essays and reflections by Daniel Dennett and David Hofstadter called The Mind's Eye, in which there are a number of things about exactly this question. Yes, as I enumerate those characteristics of consciousness, I'm aware that it's possible to talk about machines having that sort of, let's say, hyper-responsive presence. In the nature of the case, it's very, very hard to know what the presence of a machine to itself might be. People like Hofstadter talk about consciousness itself as a loop. A strange loop is his phrase. It's a highly sophisticated form of feedback, in other words. And so, my short answer is that I don't quite know whether a conscious machine, in the full, robust sense, is possible, but that I would go back to my initial point about the machine as an imperfect analogy because of its problem-solving nature. There's something more about organic consciousness, which is not so obviously directed to, as I say, the solving of extraneous problems. And I think that's where I'd probably draw the line. But I'm thinking here of some of the thought experiments and fictional stories that occur in the Dennett-Hofstadter collection, in one of which we're invited to imagine a machine, a robot, which simulates emotional response to physical attack. a machine which looks and feels rather like a small cuddly animal. It blinks its eyes, it weeps, it shrinks, it whimpers. And the question is, if you were asked to destroy such a machine, could you do so? And that's not just an intellectual question, because it's an emotional question. It relates to some of what I was saying about the license to ignore certain things. And as a thought experiment, it does at least point up how much our reaction to other selves or other consciousnesses is instinctive at that level. So I don't know, I'm waffling really. I don't know the answer to this. I'm fascinated by the question. I would still hold to that distinction between the non-function specified consciousness that we are and the highly intentional, problem-solving, directed consciousness, if you want to say, that any machine is going to be. And that means to me that the appearance of reactivity, cooperation, and so forth in the machine is always going to be simulation. But I won't try and close the door on the conversation. I just find it an intriguing area. Thank you.
I'm wondering how much of what you say applies to the higher social animals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not clear about the bacteria, but consider chimpanzees and wolves. They don't have language, obviously, but they do have subtle communication systems. They've obviously got perception, they see from location. They're highly relational.
Yes.
They're very hypersensitive to what the other fellows are doing. And they've got some memory. They keep track of what's going on in the politics of the tribe. So are chimps conscious?
I think so. It does seem to me that there are levels of consciousness one could talk about. There are good test cases and poorer test cases. I'm rather of one mind with John Gray on this, that to characterize consciousness too exclusively as a human property is something which doesn't help us in thinking about animals. And I go back again to the embarrassing fact of Descartes talking about animals as machines. You know, it's a fallacy which has had horrific effects in some ways. I would say I think that it finally comes down to a particular kind of self-reflexive linguistic capacity that marks human consciousness from other kinds. I wouldn't want to see this as other than a continuum, but there is at that particular point in the continuum, I think, a new possibility, again, of feedback, which would be absent even from the higher primates. So that's a rough answer to a complex biological question.
I was wondering if you could comment on the conversation worth having to which you alluded at the end of your talk. And I'm thinking particularly in regards to a certain cluster of thinking, sometimes called a new materialism. That is, a cluster which shares your concerns regarding the disenchanting effects of a certain portrayal of consciousness, and would largely share your portrayal of the positive points that you raise, but one that would move in the direction of an idea of a transcendence within immanence, might embrace, for example, these discussions around emergence. I'd be curious how you would approach such a conversation.
It would take a while, I think, to spell out where I might go with that, but I think the conversation I'd most like to have in that area, picking up the emergent properties thing especially, is whether it's possible to have any kind of genuinely intelligent scientific account of the world that is not in some sense teleological, in that one can say this is a system whose logic is feedback, whose logic is self-awareness. In other words, that distant goal of the self-aware is something which exercises or reverse causality, as some people say. There is a final causality in Aristotelian terms. We are on the way to a universe in which intelligence is even more pervasive than it now is. I'd want to explore that area a bit. can one dispense with teleology? I know all the problems and difficulties that arise there, but if this is indeed a system where the logic appears to be moving in that direction, never mind if it's only in a remote and unfashionable suburban planet, this is an emergent property of the universe. Intelligence has happened. So there is that in the entire system which has made intelligence possible. What does one say from there on? But sorry, it's a big question and I need more time to draw it out, I think.
I'm not even sure if this is a question, but can you say something about consciousness and mystery?
Quite a lot, really. Or possibly quite a little, which would be much more appropriate. When I talked about the cooperative nature of consciousness, I can't be conscious of my body without a consciousness of yours. That led me to say that there's something about our consciousness which has to deal with incompleteness. We are always learning, and our consciousness is not, therefore, in what's often been the sort of Enlightenment model, a nice clear beam of light that circulates, illuminating this, and this, and we fix it and photograph it and file it. Our consciousness is, as I said, a way of feeling our way, and that means we are always on the edge of what we don't know. So, to put it at its strongest and most robust again theologically, what might it be to be conscious of God? Because God is the entirety of the environment in which we stand, more or other than just the universe we know, but the entirety of the environment of agency, action we're in, there would be no way in which we could reduce that to a concept. We could fix it. And that's why I think when people write about the experience of contemplation and radical receptivity to God, they say, well, I can give you a few shots at the words, but they're not going to tell you very much. They will take you, I was going to say, to the edge of words. I believe there's a book with that title. They will take you to the edge of something. And that's, I think, entirely consistent with a doctrine such as I would accept wholeheartedly of revelation. God reveals, again being theological, God reveals who and what God is, but our response to that revelation is a receptivity, an awe, a contemplative silence, not a sense that we have mastered or contained what's given. The gift literally keeps on giving, and it overflows any capacity we have. So when religious people in general and spiritual or contemplative writers in particular say, don't expect me to tell you what God is like, that's not just a kind of evasion, well, God's a bit difficult, can't quite get him in our sights. It's more to say, well, if we're talking about God at all, if we mean what we say about God, then it really is not at all surprising that we run out of images and concepts for God. St. Augustine says in one of his sermons on the Psalms that when you start talking about God, you think you know what you're talking about, and it doesn't take long to discover that you don't.
Let me just say, having heard about consciousness as being located, related, narrated, and spoken, we have listened to a master of the spoken word, narrating us a story about this fascinating subject, a story which is clearly ongoing and incomplete. He has related to us brilliantly, as we've just heard, and we're very grateful that he was located here this evening. Thank you very much.